The moment I realized something was wrong wasn't during a failure. It was during success. I was sitting in a conference room with a whiteboard still stained from a late-night demo, staring at numbers that didn't make sense. Not because they were bad, because they were too good. Revenue projections blown apart. A system we'd rushed together under impossible deadlines, now getting serious attention. And yet, the air in the room felt flat. That's when the thought crept in. This place doesn't reward results. It survives on them. I hadn't always felt that way. Early on, I played the game exactly how it was taught. Show up early. Stay late. Say yes to every extra responsibility. Smile through the next cycle talk. Year after year, the same tiny bumps in PE arrived like clockwork, just enough to keep you hopeful. Never enough to move you forward. Eventually, they gave me a chance. Not a promotion. A test. I was handed a messy initiative nobody wanted, paired with a small team, and told to make it work. No roadmap, no safety net, just pressure. So I went all in. Days blurred together. Flights replaced weekends. Hotel rooms became offices. I learned how to keep a team moving when morale dipped and deadlines didn't care. Slowly, the chaos tightened into something solid, then profitable, then undeniable. When the numbers landed, they landed hard. The project didn't just succeed, it changed conversations. Clients who used to hesitate suddenly leaned in. Executives started dropping by meetings they'd ignored for months. Somewhere in the middle of all that, paperwork crossed my desk with language that made my stomach drop. Intellectual property. My name attached. I remember thinking, this is it. This is where things shift. They didn't. Performance review day came and went like a formality. Smiles, compliments, a flawless score across the board. Then the slide with compensation popped up, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. Barely a nudge, no title change, no path forward, just a reminder to stay patient. I nodded, thanked them, walked out calm. Inside, something snapped cleanly in half. That night, I stopped giving them more than they paid for. Not out of spite, out of clarity. I redirected every ounce of effort into myself. Certifications, technical training, skills I'd been told were nice to have, but never urgent. Turns out, urgency depends on who's paying. Weeks later, interviews started feeling different. Less like begging, more like negotiating. One offer came in that made me laugh out loud. Another came higher. One included overtime, something I hadn't even considered before. When I finally resigned, the room went quiet. The conversation wasn't about projects or timelines. It was about loyalty, about investment, about how surprising this was given everything they'd done for me. I listened. I nodded. I didn't argue. There was nothing left to explain. The first year at the new place was brutal in the best way. Long hours. Real responsibility. Real compensation. I worked hard, but this time, the math worked in my favor. By the end of that year, I did something I'd never bothered to calculate before. I compared numbers. The result wasn't close. What I learned wasn't about raises or titles. It was simpler than that. Some systems don't break. They just quietly rely on you not noticing how little they're giving back. I noticed, and walking away turned out to be the most profitable decision I ever made. The first time I met him, he was bragging. Not the harmless kind either. This was the polished, smug confidence of someone who'd never been told no. He leaned back in his chair, talking about workplace discipline, about how people abused sick days, about how anyone who missed work should be forced to prove they were actually ill. I remember thinking, this guy confuses control with character. I let it slide. I always do. My life runs on routines. I manage a rehab clinic. Buddies don't care about egos. They care about time, pressure, and consistency. At home, my partner lives in a completely different world. Court deadlines, office politics, titles stacked on titles. That's where he worked. Same firm, same floor, different attitude. Weeks later, the universe decided to tighten the screws. She woke up barely able to stand. Fever, dizziness, the kind of sick that drains the room. As she texted her office to say she wouldn't make it in, I was already reaching for my keys. Then her phone buzzed again. A message from him. Cold, precise, policy-heavy. He needed formal proof. No note, no excuse. I felt my jaw lock. While I was helping her into the car, my clinic schedule was updating on my tablet, names scrolling by. And then I saw it. His name. Booked mid-morning. Non-urgent session. Something tight, something annoying, nothing critical. My first thought surprised me. Not anger, clarity. I made one call, cleared my morning, took her straight to a physician, sat with her, watched the clock, watched the tension climb. Somewhere between the waiting room and the exam door, my phone lit up multiple times. When I finally checked it, the tone had changed. The sharp edges were gone. The policy expert suddenly sounded flexible, understanding apparently. A doctor's note wasn't absolutely required after all. Maybe they could just mark it as personal time. Maybe it was fine this once. Interesting timing, I didn't respond. Back at the clinic later that day, I updated the schedule. His appointment was gone, rescheduled weeks out. By the time he came in again, he avoided eye contact. His posture was different, smaller, like someone who'd learned that rules feel different when they push back. I never said a word about it. I didn't need to. Some lessons don't require confrontation. They just require the right inconvenience, delivered at exactly the wrong moment. Sleep disappeared first. Then patience followed it out the door. It was past midnight, the kind of hour where every sound feels louder than it should. My desk was buried under notes, alarms set for an exam that actually mattered, brain already fried. And through the thin dorm walls came bass, not music bass, the kind that rattles your ribs and laughs at noise complaints. I stared at the ceiling and thought, seriously? This wasn't new. Same room, same person, same routine. Parties that started late and ended whenever she felt like it. Knocks went unanswered. Messages got ignored. The hallway Ra had tried and failed. The volume only ever went one direction. Up that night, it went higher. I remember checking the clock and doing the math in my head. If I don't sleep now, tomorrow's a disaster. I considered going nuclear. Campus security, formal reports, escalation. Then a quieter thought cut through the anger. She hates mornings, not dislikes. Hates, said early classes were inhumane. Slept through alarms. Rolled into lectures late with sunglasses on. Suddenly, my exhaustion felt useful. I didn't confront her. I went to bed instead. Or tried to. The next morning, at exactly the moment the sun barely existed, my speaker came to life. Bright, upbeat, painfully cheerful. Bubblegum pop that sounded like happiness weaponized. I set it near the wall we shared, pressed play, and went back under the covers. The reaction was immediate. Thudding footsteps, a door slam, silence. I smiled into my pillow. The next night was quiet, suspiciously quiet. I almost thought it was over. It WASN, single quotes to, nights later, the bass came back. Softer, but intentional. Like a test. I didn't move. I just waited. Morning 3 arrived on schedule. Louder playlist. Catchier songs, the kind that lodge themselves in your brain and refuse to leave. I left for class while it played, heart racing. Wondering if I'd finally pushed too far by the end of the week. The pattern was clear. Late nights earned early mornings. Every time her parties started ending earlier. Then stopped altogether. No apology. No conversation. Just a sudden blessed silence after 10 p.m. like a rule had magically been enforced. Finals week came and went. I slept. I passed. She avoided eye contact in the hall. Sometimes justice doesn't shout. Sometimes it hums cheerfully at dawn until the message sinks in. Caffeine makes people honest or desperate. Usually both. The line curled around the cafe like a slow-moving punishment. Everyone half awake, staring at phones, guarding their spot like it mattered, because it did. I was 3 people from the register when I saw him drift forward, smile fixed, body angled, just enough to look innocent. He wasn't cutting, not technically. He leaned toward the barista, hands open, curiosity on display. A quick question, then another. By the time the answer landed, he was suddenly standing at the counter. Order placed, transaction complete. Magic. I felt that familiar spike, the one that says, "Don't make a scene. Don't be that person." So I swallowed it once, twice, 3 mornings in a row. By day 4, my patience was gone and replaced with something sharper. Observation, timing. If he was going to treat the line like a suggestion, maybe the counter could become a trap. The next morning, I moved faster. Beat him to the front by 1 place. Close enough to smell espresso. Close enough to hear him inhale, ready to perform. Before he could lean in, I stepped up and smiled. I asked about beans, origins, roasts, brewing temperatures, grind sizes, milk alternatives, foam density. I nodded thoughtfully after every answer, then followed with another question, slower than the last. I could feel the line behind me tighten like a wire. Inside, I was counting heartbeats. Is this too much? Will the staff snap? Will he say something? He didn't. He just waited. Trapped by politeness. By his own trick turned inside out, when I finally stepped away, I didn't order. I drifted back into line.com as ever. The look on his face flickered. Confusion first, then realization. The next day, I did it again. Different questions, same smile, same slow cadence. The baristas caught on. One of them smirked. Another took their time answering, enjoying the detour. By midweek, the energy shifted. He stopped hovering near the counter, stood where everyone else stood. Arms crossed, jaw tight. Once he tried to step forward out of habit, then froze, as if remembering something unpleasant. On Friday, I took it further. I reached the counter and asked about seasonal syrups that weren't listed, then about decaf extraction methods, then about cup sizes in other countries. The barista glanced at me, eyes dancing, and launched into a detailed explanation, like we were filming a documentary. Behind me, I felt the tension snap. He left the line, walked out, no coffee. The following week, the mornings were quieter. The line moved the way it was supposed to. No drifting, no fake curiosity, just sleepy people waiting their turn. I ordered like a normal human again, in and out, no performance required. Some habits don't break when you call them out. They break when they stop working. The charge hit my phone like a slap, not a small one either. For digits, labeled post-event remediation, no warning, no explanation. Just a neat line item pretending to be normal. I stared at it, replaying the night in my head. We'd swept, bagged trash, left the place cleaner than we found it. I felt that hot mix of disbelief and anger rise fast. I did what you're supposed to do, screenshots, timestamps, a calm appeal written twice to remove any hint of emotion. I pressed submit and waited, convincing myself the system existed for moments exactly like this. It didn't. The response came back fast and hollow. Decision final. Case closed. Reading it felt like being told the door was never unlocked to begin with. I sat there thinking, so that's it? You just get to invent a bill and hide behind a logo. For a day, I almost let it go. The math played tricks on me. Stress versus time. Money versus energy. Then I noticed something small that changed everything. Her listing, 5 stars stacked neatly, glowing praise, no cracks. That's when the plan stopped being emotional and started being precise. I gathered everything. Photos from the end of the night, messages confirming checkout. The invoice itself, with its vague language, I wrote slowly, clearly, no insults. No exaggeration, just a timeline that couldn't be misunderstood. Then I posted it where people actually look before they book. The first review landed quietly. The second went up somewhere else. By the third, I felt a shift. Not satisfaction, momentum. Each post linked the same proof, same calm tone, same facts. I wasn't warning people. I was documenting something that already happened. 2 days later, a stranger replied, then another, different cities. Same fee, same excuse, same dead-end appeal. Reading their comments felt surreal, like finding pieces of a puzzle scattered across the internet. None of us knew each other, but the pattern was loud. The rating started to wobble. 5 stars dropped to 4. then dipped again. The compliments got buried under timelines and screenshots. People asked questions she couldn't answer without exposing herself. I checked the listing one morning and laughed out loud, not because it was funny, because it was inevitable. That's when her tone changed. New description, softer language. Suddenly, flexible policies, discounts appeared where there hadn't been any before. Promises about transparency and fairness slid into the bio like they'd always been there. It felt less like growth and more like damage control. I never heard from her directly. No apology. No refund offer. Nothing dramatic. Just silence and a slow retreat. Weeks later, someone messaged me to say they'd almost booked that space. Almost they thanked me for saving them the trouble. I closed the app and sat back, the tension finally draining out. I didn't win my appeal. I didn't get a check in the mail. What I got was something better. A correction that didn't rely on permission. A reminder that when official channels fail, truth doesn't disappear. It just takes a different route. And sometimes, that route costs the liar far more than they planned to take. My headlights hit a wall of metal, and my stomach dropped. Not a shadow. Not a bad angle. A car, parked sideways, dead center, right where my driveway used to be. I sat there blinking, engine ticking, body heavy from a shift that had chewed me up and spit me out. All I wanted was my bed. Instead, I got blocked like a bad joke. This wasn't new. It was just worse. The house next door treated my driveway like overflow parking. Friends of friends. Quick stops that somehow lasted all night. I'd mentioned it before, calmly, casually. Each time I got the same vague nod. The same empty promise that it wouldn't happen again. Tonight, it happened completely. I got out of the car and looked around, half expecting someone to sprint over, apologizing. Nothing. No lights. No movement, just silence and a locked-in problem. I checked the curb. Street full, no workaround, no squeezing in. I felt that shift inside me, the one where patience runs out and decisions get simple. I pulled out my phone. The tow company answered like this wasn't their first call of the night. I gave the address, described the situation, asked how long. They said soon. I leaned against my car and waited, running through the possibilities. Would he come out yelling? Would this turn into a whole thing? Headlights appeared instead. The truck rolled in, slow and confident. Chains clinked. The car lifted with zero ceremony. That's when a door flew open next door. My neighbor rushed out, panic written all over him, trying to piece together what was happening. Too late, I didn't argue. Didn't explain. Didn't gloat. I watched the car disappear down the street, the sound fading into quiet. The driver handed over a slip. I finally parked where I belonged and went inside. The next day, the story found me anyway. The bill was steep. The mood next door was sour. No one parked near my driveway again, ever. No threats were made. The message landed anyway. Some boundaries don't need speeches. They just need consequences that arrive on time. The first clue was the empty cup on my desk, not the coffee. The pen. Gone again. I stood there staring at the paper like it had betrayed me personally. New page, no ink. Just pressure marks where words were supposed to be. I felt that tiny, stupid frustration bloom, the kind that stacks up quietly until it stops being tiny. This wasn't an accident. It never is. Every few days, one disappeared. Always mine. Always never returned. I scanned the room, already knowing the answer. Same desk, same smile. Same habit of borrowing without asking and forgetting without guilt. Confrontation felt dramatic. HR felt ridiculous. But letting it continue felt worse. So I changed the game. I didn't label anything. Didn't make a fuss. I just modified one pen and placed it right where the others usually vanished from. It looked normal. Felt normal. But the ink inside had a personality. Bright, loud, impossible to miss. The next team meeting dragged like they always do. Slides, updates, heads down, pens moving. I tried to focus on the screen, but my attention kept drifting sideways, waiting, wondering. Did she grab it? Did she notice? Was this about to backfire? Then the room shifted. Light caught the page in front of her and bounced back wrong. Not white, not blue. Something festive. She paused mid-sentence, frowned, and tilted her notebook. The page shimmered. Tiny flecks caught the overhead lights and refused to behave. I bit the inside of my cheek. She scribbled again, more sparkle. Brighter this time. A few people glanced over. Someone raised an eyebrow. She flipped the pen, inspecting it like it had personally insulted her. Too late. The damage was already decorative. The meeting moved on, but the moment stuck. The pen didn't leave her hand again. When it finally landed back on my desk later that afternoon, it was placed carefully. Like evidence, like an apology that didn't want to be spoken. The days that followed were peaceful. My pens stayed where I left them. No more scavenger hunts, no more silent irritation. Nothing was said. Nothing needed to be. Some lessons don't require words. Sometimes all it takes is a little shine in the wrong spotlight to make a habit disappear. The accusation landed before the lunch smell even faded. I was halfway through my afternoon emails when voices spiked near the break area. Chairs scraped. Someone coughed hard, the kind of cough that wants an audience. I looked up just in time to see him clutching his throat like he'd been betrayed by a sandwich. My first thought wasn't guilt. It was confusion. Because I hadn't shared lunch with anyone, he was red-faced, eyes watering, demanding to know what I'd put in that food. The word poison floated into the air, heavy and ridiculous. My stomach dropped anyway. That's what accusations do. They don't have to make sense to be dangerous. People turned. The room went quiet in that way offices do when gossip smells fresh. I ran the timeline in my head fast, packed my meal that morning, labeled it, left it in the fridge, walked away, came back to an empty container. Again, I'd noticed food missing before, but I'd let it slide. Easier to shrug than confront. Apparently, that kindness had expired. He kept talking, too much describing the burn. The pain, how it hit instantly, how it must have been intentional. I felt the pivot coming, the moment where silence turns into suspicion. So I spoke up, calm flat. Asked a simple question. Why was he eating my lunch? The pause was immediate. Not dramatic, worse. Confused. He stuttered, backpedaled, tried to reframe it as a mix-up. Someone else laughed. Then another. A few glances shifted, connecting dots that had apparently been sitting there for weeks. I explained what I'd packed, food I liked. Food I always ate. Food known, in the office, to be aggressively spicy. I even mentioned the bottle of hot sauce I kept at my desk. Not as a defense. As a fact, that's when the room flipped. Suddenly, his reaction made sense. Suddenly, the story rewrote itself without my help. The whispers changed direction. Someone joked about weak taste buds. Someone else asked how long lunches had been going missing. He stopped talking. HR didn't need to step in. No report, no drama. The truth had already finished the job. He avoided the fridge after that. Ate out, brought bland salads. Never looked my way. My lunches stayed exactly where I left them from then on. Turns out, stealing is one thing. Blaming the victim when you can't handle the heat is another. And nothing exposes a thief faster than accusing the wrong person over food that was never meant for them.